Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary.
The year is 3013. The galaxy is scintillating in the mellow light. Two galactic pilgrims seek out vistas in the samurai future to bring forth the unity of the cosmic shaman. Opening the door of the pantheon of mystics, the evil sorcerer wizard powers the engine of science, seeking to forever alter the sacred balance, traveling on effervescent balls of summer fire.
This week in time.
In the year 2011, we imagined a future where the rich can live forever, but the poor can die if they don't work every day. But luckily that never happened.
Yeah. Are we looking at a better or worse present?
It's literally exactly the same, just our money doesn't glow green.
Australian money probably glows green by this point. I know they have the plastic money or whatever that you can't tear apart.
Oh, we had that in the UK, yeah.
Okay. I guess America's still greenbacks, is it? Yeah. Anyway, this is Matt.
This is Luke.
And welcome to our sci-fi
Sanctuary.
Oh, Luke looks a little sleepy because it's 7:30 for us because we're weird with that.
And I stayed up till 1:30 a.m. last night playing Super Mario Bros. 2 on the NES.
As one does, yeah. Anyway, we're talking about the film In Time, directed with Andrew Nichols. One of those, high concept, deeply socially disturbing sorts of sci-fi. So our guest today talks about these social and political issues on the Ripple Effect podcast. One where I appreciate because it brings in sort of voices from all over the spectrum for sort of long-form conversations. This one might be a little lighter, but Ricky Varandas, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
I can't roll my R's. Can you do your name the right way?
Ricardo Varandas.
There we go. I cannot do that for my life.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you pick up. I guess Portuguese was my first language, so I know people say that if you don't learn how to do it when you're a kid, it's really hard to pick it up later in life. So I think there's some benefit to that.
Yeah, my parents, I guess they can do it. I guess they just didn't transfer the skills to me. Luke, can you roll an R?
Ricardo Varandas.
Okay, he's got it.
That was very good, yeah.
I can't. No, I'm not even going to try to be embarrassing. But
I'm trying to think why I learned to roll R's, and I can't think why. I think I was copying something from Doctor Who.
Luke, you're originally from where? Where'd you grow up?
England. I'm British.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So you probably, you're European, so chances are you're probably around a lot of other languages. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Europe is that it's not uncommon to have friends from all over Europe because it's so easy to travel from one country to another. So you probably have some of those Latin languages influenced somewhere. It's
embarrassing because everyone else in Europe speaks such good English that the English never learn to speak any other languages.
Well, America's not much different, to be completely honest. I mean, in regards to, them just want to learning, they just want to speak their own language, not really have much desire to learn other languages. Even Spanish, which is a huge influence in American culture. I mean, you look at so much of Florida and southern states or whatnot, they have restaurants and parts of the states and cities where it's just all Spanish speaking, and people in America still say, oh, Spanish isn't English, we should be speaking English or whatnot. But I think officially we don't really have a national language, I don't think, on the books.
I'll second that. But yeah, and Luke and I, though, we're living the stereotype because our Japanese is still completely terrible. So
Yeah, but that's a hard transition, I feel. Like, I feel like that's not a language. I feel like if you're, I speak Portuguese, so it was my first language. English is kind of not, it's not a Latin language, but there's some similarities. But you look at Japanese. I mean, I could just imagine if there's any similarities whatsoever to English. I mean, are there anything that could help?
Not no, it's its own language family. It doesn't have anything in common with anything else in particular. So
Really? Yeah.
yeah. I guess we should move on to the film a bit. I did watch this one in the theater in Japan. The director is Andrew Nichols. He had written The Truman Show. He directed Gattaca. So I was actually quite excited to see this film when it came out. I think I actually did buy. I mean, I know it's not the best movie in the universe, but it hits my dystopian sweet spot. So I was actually one of the few people I get really excited about seeing it when it came out. Luke, was this your first time on this?
Yeah, I very distinctly remember it coming out, but I wasn't really aware of the director when it came out. I just remember it from the Justin Timberlake angle. And there's a line from the film that was in the trailer which has stuck in my head since I saw the trailer. But I never got around to watching the film. And that was quite near the end, where the bad guy says, for just a few people to be immortal, many must die, and then Timberlake says, no one should be immortal if just one person can die. And I just remember thinking, like, what? Like, I don't think your math works, JT, but yeah,
Right.
For whatever reason, I never got around to watching it until now.
Okay, we'll talk about how it went down for you later. And Ricky, of course, I just thought it'd be fun to bring you on for a chat, but I know you've mentioned this one a few times because of the sort of social implications of it. When did you first see this one?
I don't remember. It was quite a while ago. It came out on I'm pretty sure I still rented it on DVD or something like that when it came out. What year was it when it came out? You guys?
2011.
2011, yeah. So I probably still rented it on a DVD. I actually enjoyed, like, back in the day going to Blockbuster and, like, looking at the artwork and seeing the back of the movie and picking it up and reading the little description or whatnot. But so many movies, you read the description and you're like, oh, this is going to be awesome, and it sucks. And then a lot of movies, you're like, this movie was awesome, and that description sucked because it didn't sell me on the movie. But this movie was kind of the same thing, where it was kind of interesting. But once I got into it, I really enjoyed the concept. Similar to you, Matt, I don't think it's a very good movie per se. Like, it's not like something that will blow your mind. But I think the concept's really interesting, and I think a lot of the concepts in the film is interesting in regards to kind of, it's just and like you've heard me say on the podcast, this idea, if you could see your your life clock ticking backwards on your wrist, how different you would live your life. You wouldn't just take things for granted. You wouldn't. I've had guests on the show where we talk about how, like, the most important thing or the most valuable thing isn't a material thing, it's your time, right? Because you can't buy more of it. In this film you can, but in real life you can't. So if you could watch that clock ticking backwards every day, maybe you wouldn't work that overtime. Maybe you wouldn't work that Saturday. Maybe you wouldn't maybe sleep in. So it's who knows, but it's an interesting concept, this idea of how different we would, because we always say, like, oh, live each day like it's your last, and don't take any day for granted. But we do all the time. And usually it takes a funeral or some tragic thing to happen in your life to kind of make you pump the brakes and make you reevaluate, or at least just force you to remember that, like, okay, no, I'm really not going to live forever. There is going to be a end to this journey, to this life. And when you wake up every morning and you put on your clothes, you go to work, or you go to the gym, you eat breakfast, whatever your routine is, it's really easy to forget that. You really do just assume, like, every day I'm just going to wake up and I'm going to do the same routines and I'm going to do the same things. And so this idea of having the clock ticking backwards on your wrist would be that reminder that maybe some of us needed to maybe pursue something we love, or not take every day for granted, and actually live the life that maybe we should be living.
Yeah, it'd be an extra torture for me. I'm one of those guys that if my phone or my iPad, like, gets under, like, 90%, I'm like, oh, I got to charge it now. So that ticking time clock for real would be pretty wild. Let's do a quick run through the story. Luke, I think you're going to give us a rundown of that.
Yep, but are we actually doing that now, or are we going to edit it in later?
I'm actually going to edit in later. This is just for the nice transition for the listeners, and now they've seen right behind the scenes.
150 years in the future, people stop aging at 25, their remaining years doled out as currency. Will Salas is a factory worker, literally living day to day as he tries to support himself and his mother, despite constant inflation and tax hikes. One night, he bumps into an old dude with 100 years burning a hole in his wallet wrist, who longs for death. After Will saves him from some gangsters, the man gives over his remaining years and drops to his death off a bridge. Will is excited to be able to help out his mother, but doesn't make it to her before she drops dead, as she's out of time. Will takes his newfound wealth out of the ghetto to a rich neighborhood. He wins a whole lot more money from a rich geezer in a poker game, then gets the hots for the guy's daughter, Sylvia. Unfortunately, the cops come calling. Will now wanted for the crime of having money and not being good stock. He escapes and goes on the run, kind of kidnapping Sylvia, but she's into it. Will tries to ransom Sylvia back to her father in exchange for a donation of 1,000 years to shelter, but he doesn't play ball. Instead, Will and Sylvia turn Robin Hood, trying to help people in a system rigged to keep them down. They realize that to make a meaningful difference, they'll need to steal a real big amount, like Sylvia's dad's fortune. They escape the timekeepers, and pull off the heist. People are now able to live, but the economy suffers because of it. So who can really say what's right or wrong? Yeah.
Oh, you go ahead.
I thought that was your intro.
Oh no.
I guess if we're talking actors, then the obvious place to start is Justin Timberlake.
You could start with Cillian Murphy, but sure, let's start with Justin Timberlake.
Well, his face is all over the posters and stuff, yes. Right? He does an okay job here.
He's one of the better musicians, I think, that shows up on screen.
Turned actor, yeah. But he never quite... I've seen him in a few like rom-coms and stuff like that, and he does those perfectly well. But here, he was good, but he never quite captivated me as like, this guy is the hero, or this guy is like super intense, going to change the world. He just seemed to be going through the motions for a lot of it. Like, he was serviceable, but never exceptional.
Yeah, I guess in this world, in the movie, like, pretty much, especially in the ghetto, like, everyone is already broken. So any spark that comes out, is, I guess, again...
Right, but he didn't quite feel broken either.
Yeah, I mean, his acting is basically slower.
Like, he's like, so... He has, like, his real tragic moment, but then he's in the casino having a good time, like, straight after. He never quite went to one extreme or the other. But yeah, he was good. And I really like Justin Timberlake. I think he's a charming guy, so he was nice to watch on screen.
I guess it was sort of tempered by the fact that, I was in high school and early years of university, right, when NSYNC were big. So, of course, as a guy chasing girls, we hated him, right? He's one of those boy band guys we hated. And then I think the turnaround was that Matrix parody with the Whatever They Do. That was fantastic. And then his solo albums, actually, I'm not a big pop fan, but I like some songs. You know, "Sexy Back," that's cool. So he's kind of made a turnaround that makes me want to give him maybe a little more credit than I would otherwise.
See, I kind of missed NSYNC, so I just know solo Justin Timberlake and him doing comedy stuff. So he's all good in my book.
Yeah. Ricky, what's your JT view?
Yeah, well, he's definitely likable. I mean, he's one of those guys that it's hard not to like. And yeah, his acting was okay. Like Luke said, it wasn't anything incredible, but it wasn't bad enough where it ruined the movie either. You know, so it was like tolerable that he kind of did it. But it is hard to kind of see him as a hero, you know, because he doesn't have this alpha male, masculine type of attitude or feel. So it's like, you know, you guys were talking about, you know, him being all over the posters and stuff. If you look at like one of the posters where he's like holding a gun and he's supposed to look like tough, it's like maybe it is because of the fact that we've watched him, especially us probably in similar in age. I'm 35. Like we watch him grow up with us, so I still see him as like, you know, I remember seeing him as a kid, you know, younger, and then see him grow up. And so it is a hard sell, which is why sometimes like certain movies I kind of enjoy if I don't know any of the characters, because I don't have any references. You know, I don't have anything to, like, if I don't know this actor from another film, I don't have to be sold, you know, and I don't have to forget him as that other actor or that other character and then sold as this new character. I can just accept him that this is who he is. This is the character that I relate to him. So when sometimes having, you know, I get the idea of having like a well-known actor or actress because it's nice to see familiar faces and people you know and people you like. But in some cases, I also enjoy just having completely new faces I don't know, and I can really be sold the character because of that.
Yeah, this one has. Yeah, definitely. I was thinking this one has a lot to do. It's kind of similar to Logan's Run, which is one of the first films we did on our podcast, and that one might benefit from having somewhat more anonymous actors. You can kind of just fall into that world and not already know the people. And yeah, this one has a little star power. Though I will say, in 2011 when I watched it, and just now I looked up the wiki a little bit this morning, I totally mixed up Amanda Seyfried and Olivia Wilde. I both times I thought Olivia Wilde was the star and she's not.
Amanda Seyfried, I think, was not in this film. She was going to be and wasn't.
Is that how? I'm looking at the cast list.
Yeah,
I think she's here. Yeah, I guess it's maybe an anonymous wig. I don't know.
So you mixed up who? Amanda and
Yeah, the main lead, and it's actually the
Oh, yeah, it is Amanda Seyfried.
Yeah.
Ignore me.
Well, you've proven my point, haven't you? Yeah, Amanda Seyfried is the female lead, and then Olivia Wilde, who had recently been in the Tron Legacy, was actually kind of a minor role, and I totally just mixed it all up in my mind. So they were a little more anonymous, I guess.
So Olivia was, I think it was Justin's girlfriend or something, right?
No, she was his mum.
There we go.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
Because they don't age, right? So
that's kind of cool, but
I definitely remember the scene where they run towards each other and she doesn't quite make it. I remember seeing that in the trailer and assuming she was a girlfriend. But no, she was his mother.
I guess it was fun to watch Johnny Galecki from The Big Bang Theory show up for like 5 minutes and then die horribly. Although I should say...
To be fair, in this, he proved that he can act, because that was a very different character.
Yes.
To his character in The Big Bang Theory.
And I can only poop on that show so much because my parents love it, but otherwise, sure.
My parents love it too, and I, watched the first season, but it is the death of comedy.
And and when I watched this, I wasn't a big fan of what was his? Well, I was a fan of his, but I became a bigger fan after Peaky Blinders. What's his name? Murphy.
Cillian Murphy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Peaky Blinders was awesome. So he was. You know what? Obviously he was great in Peaky Blinders, but just about everything I've seen him in, he's been pretty awesome. And I mean, I remember, I don't recall seeing anything where he sucked, so any movie I've seen with him, he's always really nailed it. But until Peaky Blinders is when I really started paying attention to him.
Yeah, he seems to keep coming up for us, and he's always pretty good. Well, I guess because we did a whole Nolan month, we were going to see a lot of Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, I mean, the worst we had to say was Inception, where we were just like, well, he's supposed to be a blank slate, so it's okay. As his character in that is a little bit more flat. This one, of course, is just ultra obsessed, and what a bit of a turncoat. So,
Yeah, wasn't he also in was it Red Eye or something like that? Or when he was on like a plane and he was.
Yeah, I think that was him.
I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Looking at his IMDb now, yeah, that was him.
Yeah. He's one of those guys like Tom Hardy, where just like every role he knocks it out of the ballpark, even if it's not a great character. I mean, look at Venom, right? Venom. I mean, see all the Marvel stuff in the back. Yeah. I'm a big Marvel guy too. Well, what did you think of Venom? Did you think it was?
I really enjoyed it, but had it not had Tom Hardy, it would have been a really boring film.
Yeah,
I was just watching him essentially. But it's good. Cillian Murphy has what we were kind of saying Justin Timberlake doesn't have. If he's playing a hero or he's playing a villain, he's got that intensity, and you really feel like everything he's trying to throw at you.
I guess that's pretty much the actors. Usually we get a little bit into characters, but I already joked putting in quotations. It's like everyone's just obsessed in this movie. Like, that's pretty much the character of everyone, which I guess makes sense when you have a clock on your wrist. But yeah, there's not that much. It's pretty much just templates or archetypes.
Well, yeah, so much so that I didn't even realize Amanda Seyfried was Amanda Seyfried.
I know. Sorry, Ricky, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the time as currency thing is interesting. That concept, and then remember the guy who, wasn't there a guy who committed suicide, right? He was living over 100 years or something like that.
Yeah. He, right at the start of the film, he gave Justin Timberlake his first 100 years.
It's like an Aesop fable.
But that's wild, right? So have you guys think about that? Like the idea of like, well, what if you were rich and you could live forever? Like, how unhappy do you think you would be, or how happy, or would you make the most out of it and you would find a way to still appreciate life?
Yeah, we just ended the last one with a good question. How happy or miserable would you be? I've already told you I'm so OCD just watching that, those numbers go down. I have to have over 90% of my tech, so I don't think I could handle it.
Well, have either of you read the Culture novels by Ian M. Banks?
I have not, but run it.
So it's like a sort of a Star Trek style sci-fi utopia, but taken to the extreme. Like a completely, no one has to work, there's no anything, people just live in this socialist, and people can live forever in that. And people tend to live like 500-600 years, and then you've done everything you want to do, and you just terminate yourself, or you just put yourself into storage. And every now and then you meet a character who's been around for like millennia, and everyone else thinks that's like super bizarre and crazy. Who would want to live that long? You're a weirdo. Why haven't you just packed it all in yet? And yeah, the conclusion in those books seems to be that, like, yeah, you want a few centuries to do everything you want to do, but eventually you'll just be like, yeah, I'm tired now, bye.
Well, I guess the implication here is that only the elite are living past probably about, but let's give it a normal life. It seems 70, 80 might be still be the normal life expectancy basically here.
But they were saying like 70, 80 on top of their original 25.
Oh, okay. So a little bit more.
So they were living to about 100 or so.
But then we'd have the elite that are just living for centuries and centuries, because it's made clear that this society's been running for quite a long time.
Oh, see, no, I got the impression that the elite are living that long, but the poor are not living more than like 20, 30 years.
Oh, well, I mean, our real elite, like the dude
Yeah.
from, oh God, not Wall Street. I can't think of words now. Mad Men. There's the actor from Mad Men, which he was the industrialist.
Yeah, he was just an archetype. The actor did nothing.
Exactly, but it's made clear that he is a few centuries old. So once you have,
Yeah.
he's got 1,000,000 years in his safe, right? So there are the 1%ers that are living for centuries upon centuries.
But yeah, I mean, like I said at the start, I wasn't being that sarcastic. It's not that far off. There are many people today who do live paycheck to paycheck, week to week, and if they didn't get that paycheck, they would be out on the street, out of food, and possibly die. And there are other rich who can just lounge about and don't really have to worry. Of course, they can't live for centuries, but they can live a full human lifespan pretty easily.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's why we're talking about this year. So getting that paycheck is becoming a little more difficult, I hear.
Yeah, but you're right, actually, Luke. I didn't even think about that, but it's not that different in regards to the society or the world we live in today in regards to if you make money, if you have more money, more financial resources, you can live in a safer environment, you can get better quality food, you can afford a gym membership, maybe a personal trainer, whatever it may be. So you assume the average lifespan would be larger than the person who is in poverty and eating whatever snacks or whatever they can afford and maybe living in a place that's not as clean or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it almost makes sense where it's very similar in regards to that.
Yeah, because this year, one weird thing is Japan's never quite, especially out here in Nagano, we've never quite been locked down. I think there was 2 weeks where we kind of were, and my wife has a family farm, so for that week we were like, okay, we're hanging out on the family farm. I can take these like 5-kilometer walks around and hang out in a tatami room. That's a little elite for me, but Luke, your contrast for our week off back in May. You were more or less in your apartment, were you?
Well, no, I still went for a bunch of walks up in the mountains and stuff.
Oh, right, because you were looking for bears.
Yeah, my favourite thing to do is to go far away from other people, so a pandemic doesn't really bother me.
Yeah. I was just saying living in... I was trying to contrast because you're in your relatively small apartment, but, in the middle of L.A. or something, you're in that small apartment, and it's really going to suck.
Yeah. If I was just stuck in my apartment, I might go a little stir crazy, but I can't. If I walk like that direction, I'm in the middle of a city, but I walk that direction, I'm just in the mountains. So
you kind of get the best of both worlds, counting on what you...
I can escape if needs be.
Yeah. Well, I think both are necessary, right? I mean, I think we are social creatures. We need some type of interaction with others, or we can convince ourselves of anything. But I'm one of those people that I do need a little bit of both. Some people enjoy the majority of their time being alone, and other people enjoy the majority of their time being around others. And I think I'm definitely like somewhere in between where both are necessary for me. One to bounce ideas off others, and I think the power of conversation and what you can understand about yourself and people you're talking to while conversating, I think is super important. But I also think that time to kind of just reanalyze and self-reflect and sometimes just hit reset, right? Just be able to hit reset, be by yourself. And there's a lot of people who are in the podcast who are probably listening to this one who I think never have the earbud off, right? They always, I hear it from people all the time, like, oh, I always got an earbud in. I'm always listening. But I think sometimes you need that time to just like hit pause and just like evaluate what you're listening to, like digest what you're listening to and dissect what you're listening to, because if you're constantly taking in information, but you're not giving yourself time to digest it, I think that can be harmful too, or at least it can prevent you from completely understanding what you're taking in. When I go to the gym, even though I'm a huge podcast guy, I'm constantly listening to podcasts on my drives. If I'm doing yard work, housework, if I'm doing any chore whatsoever and I can listen to a podcast, I'll have it in the background or have my earbuds in. but I find it beneficial that when I play basketball or I play soccer or I go to the gym, I don't bring in my headphones because it gives me some time to kind of be separated from anything that's mentally stimulating. I just kind of have time to kind of just think about things, between sets, be by myself, think about things, and think about maybe what I listened to the night before, or a movie. In this case, we're talking about a movie. Oh, I watched that movie last night. Okay, what did I think about it? What did I think about that concept? What was it? What was interesting about it and stuff? And I almost feel like if you never give yourself time to do that, you're just constantly taking stuff in, but you don't really have any time to digest any of it.
Getting back to your original question, I guess that's where the people in this movie would be in just complete existential torturous dread. They don't have time to stop and think and reflect. They don't really have time to socialize. They need to go get their next paychecks and so forth. I mean, what does he say? You don't have time to sleep in when you live here. So
yeah, so you live till you're 25, right? And then after that is when you got a year of life, and then you have to figure out how to get more, right?
Right, that's how they're rolling, which I guess is a little bit better than the Logan's Run, you're straight up dead at 30, but which is tomorrow for you, Luke, isn't it? You're dead tomorrow.
Yeah. The Sandmen are coming for me tomorrow. I'm probably going to run. But yeah, I've got my
I saw that. I was going to ask you. I'm like,
my students bought me those.
That's awesome.
Yeah. A couple of my students threw me basically a birthday party yesterday. It was great. They got me cake and balloons and a card.
That is awesome.
And they got away with not having a lesson.
So there's an ulterior motive there. So anyway, they can be happy. And then, yeah, I guess you can be very happy up until 25 in this world. And although you'd still be like, I remember growing up and just like, oh, how am I ever going to do bills and pay my taxes? And ironically, I've gotten in a situation where I don't do much of that paperwork now. So yay.
See, I was the kid who I just didn't think about any of that until it bit me in the ass in my 20s.
That might have been the better way to go.
Yeah, I still do that. I honestly still try not to think about it at all. I feel like life can be so overwhelming, right? Like if you stress about all those little things, like, oh, wait, when do I have to pay my car tax? When do I have to pay my property tax? When do I have to do this? Oh, what bill do I have coming up? Like, it's such a burden on you. It can just weigh on you. And so my thing was always like, I've said this on the show before, where it's just like I feel like growing up poor, or at least my mother always stressing about money, and like every conversation with her had to do with like a way of saving money or don't waste money or whatever. Like it traumatized me in a way. And I didn't really realize it until like I was older, and I'm like, why do I hate having conversations about money and talking about it or thinking about it? Then it hit me. I'm like, it was just a topic that was constantly consuming our lives when I was younger. And when I got older, I'm like, I don't want to think about it. It's not that I have a lot of it. I'm going to prevent having to think about it as much as possible, and it's just, that means that my life is going to revolve around doing things I enjoy. And then I'll make just enough money to get by and pay the bills. And I'm not going to stress about trying to make more or try to, or don't do the typical thing of putting yourself in such ridiculous debt where you end up being a slave to that job and that whatever lifestyle you have, and satisfaction is the death of desire. You can buy that material thing, it keeps you happy for a little bit, but it's going to be an endless cycle if you're going to find happiness in those material things.
So, our two protagonists are seen as like heroes. At the end, they're going to the big bank, for a big heist. But they're basically their heroism in this case is nothing less than throwing rocks at like an armored truck in the end. There's such systematic problems in this dystopia that what they're doing is nothing really. Steal 1 million years here. What does it do in the end?
I mean, they're essentially like modern day Robin Hoods is the concept, I think.
I think I wrote Robin Hood as well.
But I mean, but the thing with Robin Hood is like he did that for a while, but eventually he did have to go and kill the sheriff. And so like they're doing stopgap measures, but they haven't solved anything.
Trilogy, because every movie around this time was going to be a trilogy, and it just didn't do well enough. But I don't know, because
I mean, it used to be every movie was a trilogy. Now every movie is a full cinematic universe. So yeah, it definitely felt like it was leaving like open-ended enough for a sequel. But because it had that sort of high concept sci-fi, like you mentioned Logan's Run and stuff, sort of feel, it felt like that just is where it ends. Like it's given you a slice of this future. It's given you something to think about. It's not supposed to give you all the conclusions.
Recent to this film was Surrogates. One, I don't know if either of you have seen Surrogates.
I actually did see that one in theater because I love Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed that one quite well. That one does end, and that one might make it a little ham-fisted by having like the breakdown of this society system at the end. Although it's a little more cathartic, I guess, to have that happen at the end of your movie. Where this one is just like,
well, this is like what we were talking about with the Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker thing, right? Where I like the ending of The Last Jedi because you leave the theater thinking, I have to go do something. Whereas when you leave the theater thinking, oh, everything's solved, then when you're trying to make a social commentary like this, it doesn't really have the desired effect.
So I guess I feel like maybe they held their punch a little bit, possibly because they thought they'd go further.
Yeah. You're supposed to leave the theater feeling like angry and like, God, I want to go do something about the unfairness and injustice in the world.
Ricky, what are your thoughts? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say I did like the Jaguar in the movie. Remember, there was a convertible, I think E-Type, right? Wasn't there?
Oh yeah.
Is that the one Justin bought when he first gets rich?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It was the silver convertible E-Type, I think. I'm a Jag guy. I like Jaguars.
Yeah, my grandparents' house was. Yeah, there were lots of like muscle car looking ones, but yeah, my grandparents lived right by a Jaguar dealership when I was growing up. So I used to, I mean, obviously none of us could afford them, but we used to see them every day. And they had like the big silver statue of the Jaguar at the front and stuff. So yeah, those are nice cars. For me, I'm more of the muscle car guy, but...
Well, I was thinking just because it's funny how like you're talking about futuristic, but yet like there's still appreciation for like the analog car, right? I mean, it's like Elon Musk has one, non-electric car, and it's a Jaguar E-Type. And there's almost something more. I almost feel like we relate to it more than we do a electric car or like a electric watch or whatever. I'm usually wearing a watch, and it's always like a analog watch, something that's like sometimes automatic watches, just because there's something. I don't know. There's just something that we can understand. I mean, appreciation for the engineering, but there's also a connection, I think, because like it was hand built, it was made by man, and just something more human than like an iPhone. It's the same thing with like people who like reading magazines or comic books compared to using a Kindle. Like everybody thought Kindles were going to be the next big thing, and I think there's still a lot of people out there who appreciate getting. I mean, I still get Car and Drivers at home. I still get buy books from time to time. I don't always read them, but I do buy them, and they're just something I like about feeling it, and just I don't know if it's a smell and the feel and just the whole packaging. We grew up, we're roughly probably around the same age. You're turning 30, so I'm 35, and we grew up still opening CDs. There's something cool about opening a CD, besides how hard they made it to open, because remember that how it was a pain in the ass. It was always
Yeah, trying to peel the foil off.
that it was always like, okay, I got the first layer off. Now there's this sticky little thing on top that won't. But it was fun. There's something about the whole process and opening the artwork. I remember I used to be a nerd about it and like go into like the thank yous, and then band knows that band, or or who did guest appearances, who played percussion or keyboards or whatever, and I'd be trying to figure out like, okay, who's this guy that played keyboards in this track? Do I know him? What band is he in? And it was just the whole thing was nice. So when I saw that E-Type in the movie, I remember thinking, the same thing as like when you hear about Elon Musk having a E-Type, it's just like there's something about the digital world that seems so far from us, from relatable, that I just think we still have this connection to the analog world that we just like. They're just, I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? Do you have that same feeling?
Yeah, I think there's something about when with something analog, even if, I'm not an engineer, I couldn't make it, but I can kind of understand how something works. I can understand, like, okay, in this car it burns the fuel, that makes something spin, the car goes, and I can mechanically feel it. Like, I pull up the clutch, I can feel it bite into gear and go. With a clock, I can, like, feel it ticking as it goes. It feels real. Whereas I know nothing about how a computer works. So it's just voodoo to me. I open up my phone, and somehow something's happening on the screen, but I don't really understand. So I can't feel a connection to the human being on the other side who made this thing. Whereas something mechanical, there's like a relationship. Even with a book, when I have a paper book in my hand, it's like, I can imagine making one of these. Whereas like, when you can just pull a book off of Kindle, which I do as well, because it's a lot cheaper and easier to read a book that way. But it's like, it's coming from the internet. It doesn't even feel like it's coming from a human being.
I know in the States I always drove stick shift, right? Japan, especially for Americans, it's quite difficult to get a license, and you get an automatic license. So like now I legally can't drive a stick shift, and I definitely miss that. I guess it's the hum of the engine. The worst we get the best we get from a computer is like it's overheating. So maybe the fan's making horrible noises if it's a laptop or something.
Yeah, my brother still, and I had a lot of cars that were standard, and there is something about, same thing, where you feel like you're a part of the process. You feel like you're a part, it's not just you're in this thing and you're a passenger, but you're actually participating in the driving process, with a stick shift, where automatic's not quite the same. Now cars have gotten so fast that I'm like, I don't know if when you're talking about every car having 500-600 horsepower, if having a stick shift, before, back in the day, you bought the stick shift because it was faster. The automatic transmissions were actually slower, and now technology's gone in complete opposite direction, where now you buy stick shift just because it's fun, because the automatic transmissions blow the other ones out of the water and are always faster. But people still buy them because of like I said, like they're just something that. And humans in general, right? We're more analog than we are digital. Like Luke said, no, I've tried to explain the internet to my parents. I've tried to explain the internet to my kids. It's not easy. You basically are describing magic. Yeah, I'm like, there's no real explanation, because one, I'm not sure. You don't realize how little you understand how it really works until you have to explain it. But the other thing too is just like, it seems like magic. It just like this stuff happens, but it happens where? Like, where is it happening? It's happening in this like other place or this other realm, or, you're trying to explain to them where it's like, I remember the first time my mother's like, wait, you can check the emails on your phone and on the home computer? I'm like, yeah. Like, well, where the hell's the emails? And I'm like trying to explain to her that I'm like, it's not really here or there. It's kind of everywhere. But you can understand like the analog thing, right? Like our human bodies are analog, right? Things break, you can see it fixed, you can, you get cut, you see blood, it heals, you can see it happening, things move, we have joints, similar to analog things, where for something to move, it has to have some type of joint or something to spin or whatever. So I just think it makes more sense to us, and it's closer to us than, anything digital.
Well, to go back to the film a little bit, that was kind of the point, because when Justin Timberlake bought the car, the clerk was like, okay, so we can deliver it to where you want to display it. And he's like, display it? I'm going to drive it. Because, like, for those rich people who I guess we're not meant to identify with, they've kind of lost their humanity. They don't drive the automatic car and feel that connection to the analog. They don't care about that. They just put them on a shelf because they look pretty. And, like, even a little later, they have outside the, like, mansion is the beautiful sea that they can swim in. And the thing is, like, they don't do that. And we were talking about, like, sometimes you have to turn off your podcast. Me and Matt have talked. Sometimes when you're just, you're surrounded by trees and nature, I have to, like, mentally tell myself, no, take out your headphones. Be here for a minute. Feel some breeze, smell some plants, hear, like, the animals and the rustling. And yeah, when you start to forget that, perhaps because, like, oh, it's a little dangerous, but, that's what being alive is.
After peppering up the ether, infusing now up the spirit glass, frankincense wending as angel's hair, infusing draughts of the newborn air, raising out of, locking down on, turning away from, walking out of, the myriad talons of Saturnine Babylon, and the Drek Legion under Old Echelon.
We just finished talking about all the analog stuff. And this movie, the director does have an affinity for the analog. If you watch Gattaca, same thing. The Truman Show gets started just because a lamp falls from the fake sky. So he's definitely into that analog thing. But this movie was one of the first major Hollywood movies completely filmed digitally. It was Roger Deakins, who's a big cinematographer if you're into film, but he did like Coen Brothers films, but this was his first digital movie. And I usually talk a lot of crap about digital on this podcast, but other than being a little green and washed out, it's a good looking movie.
Yeah, there was never a moment where like when we watched Minority Report, which I know was a little bit earlier.
Same cinematographer, by the way.
But in that one, it felt like every shot was a green screen, right?
Mm.
Whereas here, it felt like, I mean, I don't know how much of it was filmed on location or green screened, but it never felt like Justin Timberlake was just, running on a treadmill in front of a screen. It always felt like they were in places.
No, they were using nice locations, even to the point where suddenly Dayton, Ohio has desert, but, that's fine.
So yeah, that could be true. I know nothing about American geography.
I'm pretty sure Dayton doesn't have desert. That's who we were talking. They have snow. That was who we were talking to Monday. He lives there, but
okay.
But yeah, how about just the basic? This is one of our first really kind of digital films with all that analog base. They're using locations and old cars and stuff, but the actual technology was one kind of pushing the digital a little harder.
I mean, I'm surprised to hear that because Attack of the Clones was 9 years before this, and that was all digital.
Yeah, I think I'm talking with this cinematographer in particular.
Okay.
But big deal. If you know anything about that art form, he's basically the top of the mountain. So.
It looked good in terms of it did have good shots and stuff. But I remember thinking there was a couple of scenes where they're chasing and shooting and stuff. The action wasn't really anything, was it? I never really felt edge of my seat, thrilling action. It just felt almost like network television. They're just running and occasionally they shoot bullets and they ping off something. But it never felt very well choreographed or tense or exciting action set pieces.
I guess they're hoping the cars were cool enough that people wouldn't notice.
The car chase was okay.
No, I was just going to say I kind of agree with the action. Yeah, it never really took, certain movies, you're at the edge of your seat and the action just kind of felt okay. I didn't feel like it took me in, I was actually feeling physically any of the same stress that was going on. Because sometimes if it's a good action film, you almost tense up, you're in the scene, and you, like Luke said, I didn't feel any of that. It wasn't that it was bad. It was just I just wasn't as engaged with it as I think a good action movie. And there are some, I'm sure. I just can't think of any right now. But
I get the impression he wasn't really... The director didn't want to make an action movie. But it's just like, oh, well, this is a high-budget, high-concept sci-fi, so there's got to be a gun and a shooting in it. But I don't think he ever went out of his way to make an action film.
His previous films were Gattaca, which is great, and Simone, Simone, whatever it is, which is not so great. But those are high-concept ones that didn't particularly have any action. So maybe maybe it was like, and neither of them were breakout successes. So maybe that's why this one at least made the attempt. But right. It wasn't a skilled director for that sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah, and what was his most recent movie? He has one. And
I'm cheating and looking at the wiki.
I am. Yeah, I just pulled it up myself. And Anon, or no, however you pronounce that.
Yeah, Andrew Niccol. It looks like he hasn't actually made any particularly recently. He made Lord of War. That's an interesting one. Recent movies are Good Kill from 2014 and The Host from 2013, which I think is on our schedule at some point.
Oh, he made that?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard from those guests in a while because, the world went crazy. But I will drop them a line.
But yeah, Good Kill, maybe?
Yeah, what was the one, we're talking about who? Is it the director?
Yeah, Andrew Niccol, the director.
Yeah, so what is it, Anon? A-N-O-N?
Let me have a look at that.
That's wasn't he a director on that? He was directed by
Non-type football. Yeah, I'm not so. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on that. Sorry.
No, it was actually a really good. It was something to maybe look into because that was actually a really good film.
Yeah, we're always up for a good suggestion or two.
I'll actually send you the Wikipedia to it. I think you could probably open it up.
Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, it's actually the film's name. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I was looking at People here. That's why People play. Here we go. British science fiction thriller film. Okay. Oh.
Amanda Seyfried again.
Yeah, that is him. I wonder why it didn't come up on his page. I guess no one's updated his page recently. So.
Yeah. It's actually pretty good. I recall watching it, and it had like a really. I don't remember what the concept was, but I remember it being another really interesting concept, and I love those thoughts.
Apparently, it was released as a Netflix original, so maybe that's why it didn't make such a splash.
Okay. Anyway, I like the director, so we'll put that on our schedule somewhere. So, In this time, does it really hold up?
I feel like it feels more relevant today than it probably did in 2011.
But maybe it does, but like we said, I don't know if the car seems a little creaky just in terms of filmmaking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but it also, because the world it creates is so vague, like it doesn't show that much sci-fi technology or anything. It doesn't feel like super dated. There was no point where I was like, oh yeah, they would do that in 2011, but you wouldn't do that now. It's a very bare bones in terms of filmmaking, but I feel like the director probably would have put out exactly the same film if he made it tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm just thinking Logan's Run, which looks extremely dated, kind of holds up better.
I think with Logan's Run, there was a bit more moral ambiguity and stuff. They tried to do that with Cillian Murphy's character, but for the most part, or maybe also, Justin Timberlake is Justin Timberlake. So the whole film, he's the good guy. You're supposed to like him. But with Logan's Run, I don't really know that actor for anything except Logan's Run. So you're watching it and like, I don't know, like, oh, is he in the right? Is he in the wrong? What is the moral quandary here? Whereas with this film, like, right from the dot, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. These guys are good and these guys are awful.
Yeah, I guess
there's not really much
a little too black and white
there,
here, which might be a bit of the flaw.
But I feel like you can't be any less black and white with this kind of issue.
Yeah, the setup of the film is so extreme; it would be hard not to be black and white. It's like, no, you don't want this.
Yeah, and like sometimes you've got to hit people over the head with your metaphor for them to take it in.
Yeah, but I agree. Like it doesn't create much of an internal dilemma in regards to like, okay, mixing. You guys are talking about black and white in regards to like who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. There's some films that do that, and it makes you feel like, okay, I kind of like the bad guy. Is he really bad? I kind of like the good guy, but he's kind of a shithead, and it's like it kind of, like you said with this, it almost just seemed like, okay, it's really cut and dry. There's good guys, there's bad guys, and then here's the concept really early, and then it just doesn't really, maybe it doesn't grow from there. And why do you think some films, because I've even myself, like, I'm always curious, like, why do some films seem to hold up, even if, like you said, the special effects, certain things don't stand the test of time in regards to, like, it's not as good as today's films, but yet you watch and you're like, holy crap, this is actually, because during the lockdown, a lot of people were going back and watching old films, and there's some that you're like, holy crap, this is like not the way I remember, this is awful. And then there's some films that you're like, oh my God, I still really enjoy that, even though it's old. And why do you think that is? Do you think it's just because it's a better quality film, just in general? It's a good film will, kind of like a good song, right? Even if the you don't have all the technology to make the song sound as good as, as the newer songs coming out now with all the digital technology, but just because it's a good song and it's a good concept and well written, that will surpass any shitty song written with all the best technology.
I think it's always the human element. If you can believe the characters and you can feel what the characters are feeling, you'll go along with the film, even if, the spaceships look like they're on strings and the monster is a guy in a suit and whatever. If you can feel the story and the characters, it will hold up. Because, people are people, and people have been people for 10,000 years. And there are elements of us that haven't changed in that time. And if you capture part of that, then your film is just going to hold up forever. But if you tried to rely on, like, your concepts and effects, and you don't have characters that work, then your film can feel like it's outdated, after a week.
There might be, like, some secret sauce, too. Like, I guess Steve Jobs usually comes across as an asshole, but I remember reading something in the book like, no, the inside of the iPhone needs to be beautiful too. They're like, well, no one's going to see it. It's like, yeah, but that's how we construct them. And with the people working on a movie, like, I like to talk about the 1960 or whatever Time Machine, which technically the effects are terrible, but watching that movie, I just feel like the people making those effects were like so invested in it, like it just comes through in the film, and I love those effects, even though they're technically terrible.
You can really tell when something's been made by people who care. Like, we talked earlier about liking the Marvel films, right? Look at the Marvel films, and then some of, like, the Sony stuff or the DC stuff, where it just feels like the script was written by a committee, the effects guys just turned up and did the bare minimum, so the monster's just a grey blob. The actors are just sort of daydreaming their way through it. And then you watch something like Thor Ragnarok, where everyone involved clearly cared so much, and just even the smallest details are so fun, because it's been made by people who want to do this.
I guess that's the thing where In Time does, even though I know it's not a great movie, it just appeals to me in terms of that design. I mean, the cars, come on, the cars. Whoever was doing that, which I believe was partly the director, but yeah, the people doing that, you just feel like the way they dressed them up to look retro future, and I mean, they must have had a blast doing that. So that, I guess, kind of comes through in this film.
But yeah, and like, we talked about, like, Justin Timberlake's not the best actor ever, but he is watchable and likable. And he does clearly, like, try and put some emotion in, and you feel like his character cares about these things. So it's watchable.
So I think we've ping pong answered your question there a bit.
Yeah, no, and I think in regards to this film, the certain films, even if they're not great, just having a really interesting, thought-provoking concept like this one, it still makes it kind of relevant, right? It can still, even if the film's not perfect, the acting's not great, but if you have a really interesting concept, and this, I mean, I guess this goes back to what Luke said in regards to it being very human. I mean, if so much of what we watch on film, we end up relating it to our own personal lives. You know, the reason why you like maybe a good comedian is because he's telling your story at times, or saying things that you have thought about. You know, there's so many great films that's what we love about it, is that it's something very human about it. Something, you know, you feel like you're watching a real story about real tragedy or whatnot. You know, recently, like Ozark, for example, was a good example, because my wife gets really bored with films that are very dialogue driven, and Ozark, you'd have certain episodes where it would just be a lot of dialogue and not action. There's nothing really crazy happening on screen besides these very emotional storylines and characters, and she would get caught up in these storylines and characters, and it would take her in. And I think that is like the beautiful thing about a good film, is that it doesn't matter if it takes place in, like I remember I used to say that like House of Cards and Game of Thrones is the same story being told in different times, right? It's just like this, people trying to get up the ranks and stabbing each other in the back and whatever. So it doesn't matter what time period we're talking about. It could be in the future or in the past. There's things about humans that still stay the same, and we still have a lot of the same tendencies. It doesn't matter if we're riding a horse or we're riding a spaceship. Like, we still have a lot of the same tendencies, a lot of the same flaws, a lot of the same desires. And if you can connect with that, and if and as a consumer of this entertainment or creation can connect with that, then it, like you said, it doesn't matter if it takes place in the future or what time period it is. If you can connect with the human aspect of it, then I think it sticks with you.
Anyway, unfortunately, I think we do need to start putting a bow on this thing. So, Ricky, we really enjoyed having a chat. Can you tell the good listener where they can get into your stuff a bit?
Yeah, it's called the Ripple Effect Podcast. I have a little bit of everything, in regards to guests. I have authors, researchers, musicians. We're talking about futuristic stuff. Like I've had the singer of Fear Factory, Burton C. Bell, who does a lot of the man versus machine thing, and just so many different people from different parts of the world, comedians, all that stuff, and it's just a casual conversation. It's very much like a Joe Rogan type of concept in regards to style. But it's very much also like a James Corbett type of thing in regards to content. A lot of the topics he hits on are topics that I talk about. And it's available everywhere, the rippleeffectpodcast.com. It's on iTunes, Google Play, anywhere you can get podcasts. It's also on YouTube if you want to visually see the guests and I have a conversation. And I'm on all the social media platforms, Twitter, RV36, Instagram, RV36, Parlor now, RV36, and I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook page for the Ripple Effect Podcast. You can connect with me on there, or send me a friend request, and I'll connect with you if you tell me you're not a robot from the future.
And Luke, how about not the robots from the future, but the monsters from the present? What is Pokemon? Is it the present? Is it the future? I don't even know.
Yeah, vaguely.
Somewhere. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're into your pocket monsters, you can check out my other podcast, Luke Loves Pokemon. That's on Twitter at Luke Loves PKMN, or you can find it on Facebook or iTunes or whatever you want to do. I'm pretty sure you already know if you want to listen to a Pokemon podcast or not, so I'm not going to give the hard sell. And if you've enjoyed the music you've heard in this podcast, you can find Matt's music at rovingsagemedia.bandcamp.com.
Nice. So you do music too?
Yeah, I've been doing the music for, since the mid-'90s. So, that's where I made most of my internet presence. So that's when we do the segments here. I kind of put the music between the segments and change it up every week for fun. So I don't know what this one will have quite yet.
And it's all music that you all original stuff, and you just use it for your podcast for the cut up to segments?
Pretty much. There's a few covers. We did Rocky Horror, so with the guest, we put out like a little EP of Rocky Horror cover songs. I did a bunch of old 50s songs and Beatles songs and Beach Boys. Called it Fucking Up the Oldies. But yeah, everything else is pretty much, straight up original. And one important thing, Luke and I collaborate on this podcast. I have my collaborator for the music's not even like a musician. So he writes lyrics, he does a spoken word. At the beginning of the show, you hear his spoken word. So, it's just, I think the art of collaboration is good in any way you can find it. But this collaboration, I'm going to try and shout out our letters. MLSFS Pod.
Yes, we are MLSFS Pod on Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook. Just search Matt and Luke Sci-Fi Sanctuary. Or if you want to find us on your podcasting app of choice, give us a 5-star rating and review. Apparently that helps. I just still don't think we've actually had any reviews, despite the fact that we apparently have like 500 or 600 listeners. So put your fingers out, guys.
Yeah. And this is pretty much right on our first year anniversary of doing this.
Yeah, we must be coming up on the year sometime soon.
So we're faking it till we make it, but we got folks like you coming in, so we seem to be faking it okay at this point.
Oh, that'd be great, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've actually shot an email his way, but maybe, every once in a while, you just try again, right? So. Yeah, definitely.
But they do cost time.
Oh, yes, they do cost time. But at least it's not counting down on our wrist. No, we've actually gotten quite quick responses from people, so I guess we're on a nice synchronistic bounce or something. So that's yeah. We did Minority Report with him, so we want the unwanted around here. So. But Luke, what should Ricky and all the nice people do now?
Well, I'm afraid that listeners, your time is up, so you're just going to have to drop off a bridge.
There we go.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. Well,
Easy
it
peasy.
started. All this stuff started because of my music. When I first started getting attention or trying to get attention on social media, it was all like everything revolved around my music project called Theory Six, and even the name of my podcast was named after a Theory Six song called The Ripple Effect. And then I just never end up changing it. I'm just like, okay, I'm just sticking to my guns. I guess I'm just gonna keep everything RV Theory 6. But yeah, so everything's still RV Theory 6. I figured it kind of makes sense because the Ripple Effect podcast wouldn't exist if the Ripple Effect song didn't exist, and if my music didn't exist, then I wouldn't have the podcast. Because the reason I got into it was because I already had microphones and software and kind of knew a little bit about editing and whatnot. So, and also I never shut the fuck up, so that helps with wanting to start a podcast.
How long did you go for the music?
What do you mean in regards to?
I'm just thinking it took me 14 years trying to push the music as my primary presence in the universe. I still make it and all that, but yeah.
I'm sure you've heard me say it, but it was more rewarding doing the podcast because it was a quicker reward, where the music, it was like, I'm assuming you do everything yourself, like you play a couple of instruments, record all of them or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much. Occasionally I get someone to, like, recently I've got my 72-year-old father throwing some harmonica, which I can't play, interestingly. But
Yeah. But you know how time consuming it is to like start with just a idea in regards to like maybe a concept of like what type of song you want to write or whatever. Yeah. I love writing lyrics. I've always loved writing. There's something about it forcing you to kind of reflect and put into words how you feel. That helps you also in the process analyze how you feel. I love that aspect of it. And then I just loved like building off that, like, okay, what's the lyrics? What type of feel reading these lyrics, what type of feel do I think the song has? And then building off that. And it was awesome when it all came together. I love the theme